Welcome, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us. I am in conversation today with Supriya Gupta, who's the director of this new documentary on the match fixing saga that rocked Indian cricket at the turn of the millennium. Supriya is joining us, the director and maker of Caught Out, which is available on Netflix. I'm also joined by Murali Krishnan, who's one of the journalists formerly with Outlook who worked on breaking various facets of this entire match fixing saga. So thanks a lot to both of you for joining us. Supriya, I have to begin by asking you, this is a saga that all of us lived, and especially as someone who covered sports, we all lived while it was happening. It was definitely one of those stories that caught the bustling Indian newscape very strongly, especially TV media. A lot has been written about this, a lot has been said about this. So, why did you choose to focus on this story? Because many would say that it had already been delved into a lot.
Shivani, hi. Thanks, first of all, for giving us some airtime to talk about our film. Like you said, the events that happened and unraveled in 2000 were very much a part of our very much a part of our history. Personally, for me as well, growing up in the 90s, when cricketers were our heroes, because you either had
Hmm.
your Bollywood stars or you had your cricket icons, and those were your mentors. And we know it has been covered. We know there was a dark period in cricket. We know something happened. It was written about then. But we don't know the finer details of how this unraveled and what happened, how the investigation took place, and what the findings were. Now, the CBI report, this was the first time the CBI actually put out a report in the public domain, because this was something which was of public interest. Everybody, as viewers, as cricket fans, enthusiasts, our dreams were dashed in a way. And so the reason why now, 20 years on, we decided to do something like this is because it's so nostalgic. It's very much a part of our history, and we'd like to know finer details of what happened. And that's what the film seeks to do.
Murli, you were one of the journalists who worked on their various facets of the story. What would you say is something that possibly a lot of people who track the story, the journalists and cricket fans alike, would not know that they can, get to know from Caught Out, the new documentary?
Well, that's a good question, actually. A lot of it is in the public domain, all right? But there are certain facets about this documentary which still have not have not come out. Like, for example, things on what the CBI did, for example, how they went about their investigation. Okay, in terms of like I told you, this was something which was completely new to them, and
Hmm.
to covering corruption on the political level, or perhaps even corporate malfeasance. But to get into an area like match fixing, all right, how they went about it. Those, and for example, you have someone like Arun Savani who articulates this pretty well in the documentary,
Hmm.
as well as, for example, how do they piece this entire thing together? We have the former police commissioner who later went on to become the CBI Joint Director, Neeraj Kumar, who we never knew. For example, how he touched base with Mukesh Gupta in the hotel. Those are details which have not come out as yet. Okay, and I think, these. It's good. Perhaps sometimes these small details just spice up a story better. Not spice up a story as much
Hmm.
as it just value adds to the investigation. And I think,
Hmm.
in many ways, I think Potter did bring out these small details which so far henceforth had not come out.
Hmm. And Supriya, I can imagine that you did face a little bit of difficulty in putting this story together, especially speaking to the protagonists themselves. I remember reading somewhere that obviously the cricketing faces are still not very willing to come out and talk about it, right? So you had to rely on piecing together the story with the policemen, the CBI officials, of course, journalists like Murli. What were the challenges that you faced making this documentary?
So thanks for flagging that, Shivani. Yes, it's been a bit of a challenge to piece this together, because when you kick off a film, you obviously want to tell two sides of the story. You want it to be
Hmm.
balanced. You want to give airtime to all stakeholders involved. But for us, at the top of it, when we started out, we knew that our heroes are the investigators. These are your unsung heroes who 20 years ago stuck their necks out to tell you the dark, dirty secret that you didn't want to hear at the time. We as a public were
Hmm.
angered when they started coming out. These were almost things we knew were happening and didn't want to know about at that time. If you remember, we would watch a lot of cricket games and say, ye wala to fixed tha. It was so
Hmm.
casually said back in the day. And then this breaks. And for us, going forward, we thought these are the stories we want to tell of people who dived in and found this truth for us. Now, we did make attempts to reach out to the cricketers, but like they did 20 years ago, and like the CBI report tells you, there was a conspiracy of silence. So
Hmm.
that continues 20 years on. It's not something that wants to be talked about in the cricketing circles. But as journalists, as filmmakers, we did make that attempt. And the nearest we could get is, get legal teams on board and reach out to whoever possible to make sure that we have that voice represented somehow.
Murli, what do you remember from those days? I mean, it's over 20 years. You were in the thick of things. How difficult was it to get to the bottom of everything? And to be honest, a lot of us who at that time was watching this play out, I mean, I was obviously very young at that time, but a sports buff. Um, a lot of us still feel that maybe there's no closure still as far as this story is concerned. A few people did get punished here and there, but a lot of things are still left in the open, isn't it? There was no conclusion to a lot of things that were being suspected or being alleged. Murli.
Well, right now, when I look back at it, it's sort of got a lot of historical value right now. Okay, it's more than 20 years,
Hmm.
and but then you see, I was lucky because I worked in a place where you had an editor who's extremely supportive, and more importantly, was a fan of cricket, and
Hmm.
when he saw that things were not right in the world of cricket, he gave a free hand to reporters who had the zeal, who had the whim and the vigor to pursue a story. And I think that's what got me going out there. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. You got to keep knocking at doors. You face rejection. You got to keep moving on. There are many ways to skin a cat. So therefore you have to keep beavering away. But finally, it did happen. Like I said, if you keep persevering, I think you would land up with pay dirt. And I was lucky that no, at least we managed to come out with the best obtainable version of the truth. Like you rightly
Hmm.
said, there is much more which is still unsaid, and you could only peel so many layers and not the entire core.
Hmm. But what, according to you, Murli, was the turning point of this entire story? Because there was a point for a long time that nobody wanted to believe it, nobody wanted to do anything about it. So, what, according to you, was the turning point
uh, Turning point to
for
of
the
match
entire
fixing.
match fixing saga? Yes. At least the saga that as it was breaking and coming out into the media and to the public domain. What do you think was the turning point for this story?
I think I wouldn't say there was a turning point. There were several sort of very important phases during the match fixing episode. Okay,
Hmm.
one was like, for example, yes, uh, Manoj Prabhakar, who went along with Telka, uh, carrying doing the sting operation on various cricket personalities. Okay, that opened the floodgates. Okay,
Hmm.
like I said, though it might have been just anecdotal evidence, but from there on, okay, it priced open many other things. Okay, and then after which, that was when the CBI stepped in, and we got to know how the Indian cricketers were involved after Hansi Gate. And from
Hmm.
there on, you looked at what else? You looked at other foreign players. What happened in India, all right, especially in the match fixing saga, was that it uh, forced many cricketing boards across the world to clean up their acts. Okay, England, West Indies, uh, Kenya, Sri Lanka. All right. So this was basically, the dirt which came out from India. I think helped many other cricketing boards to clean up their act. And it's not as if it stopped there. There were still murmurs even in the mid 2000s, but
Hmm.
now to a large extent, I would say that I wouldn't say it's safe and clean, but until of course we were hit by another scandal.
Mm, absolutely. Well, the threat is always lurking. I think that much is quite clear. But the ICC, for example, at the top of the cricket world, has more processes and safeguards in place. And there are, of course, update news that keep coming in of some cricketer here and there falling for certain traps or indulging in such activities. But I think by and large, awareness has also increased amongst cricketers, and avenues are so much that money, possibly the lure of money, quick money, is going down. But leaving that aside, Supriya, I want to understand from you, if we were to tell the viewers watching, what is that one thing that they should look out for in this documentary, or that you think they would really enjoy coming across? What would that be?
This film is basically a documentary. It weaves in nonfiction with a little bit of drama because there's a lot of
Hmm.
it that you kind of need to explain how things unravel. And I'd say that's what you need to come and watch this film for. There are some specific turning points to answer your question. What is it that led to the turning point? There are those turning points that we touch upon that actually made us as a nation want to investigate what was going on at home, what was going on in our game, because by now it had become a global issue. And I think to
Hmm.
understand how we then went on to deal with this, how we went on to investigate this big scandal, is something you need to come in to watch out, because those are the finer details that are not available very easily. That's what you want to know. And after this, you'll realize what heroes our journalists and investigators are who've agreed to talk to us 20 years on. Again, stuck their
Yeah.
necks out to tell you that story.
Murali, finally, I want to ask you, what is it about this match fixing saga you think makes it a very enduring story that as Supriya, as a filmmaker, even 20 years down the line, is looking at it? And, fans are generally very curious about what really went on at that time. What do you think makes it so intriguing? Of course, it has cricket in it, it has corruption, it has crime involved. So all the elements are there. But possibly because there's still so much we want to know of what really went on. Do you think that's what makes it so enduring a story in Indian sports, but also in Indian history?
Yeah, you just said it right now. Cricket. It's a country which is cricket crazy. You don't need two people to talk about cricket. You can be happy talking about cricket yourself. All right.
Mm,
And once when you add sort of uh, what should I say, intrigue, and more importantly, match fixing, and then you have the
mm,
underworld thrown in also. I mean, it makes
yes.
for such a, it makes for such a, fascinating story. And like I said, there's still so much which still could be, which is still uncovered. And like I said, that's the limitations of a journalist. You can only cover this much and no further. Okay, but I think match fixing in cricket will always be something which every Indian will be happy to uh, know about.
Mm, mm. And as a journalist for you, do you have a story to share which was very curious or very interesting from your times when you were covering this story? Any episode that comes to mind?
Well, there's several actually, many,
Mm,
but I remember. You see, the fact is, I mean, I interviewed Azharuddin soon after.
mm,
He broke his silence with me, but
mm,
beyond that, we started looking at other links, the underworld links, which is very important, and trying to find out, how whether they had really ensnared not just the Indian cricketers, but cricketers from other countries as well.
mm,
So I remember once getting a phone call from someone. It was a call. At that time, we didn't have mobiles. It was 99,
mm,
2000, 2000, 2001. We're lucky if we had a
mm,
mobile at that point. And I got a call saying that someone from, sounded a deep baritone, husky voice out there saying, you know, Kaiko no entry lane may gusta re, which means that why are you getting into areas you shouldn't do, right?
mm,
And it was, I remember that, but that was trying to sort of ward me off. But it went on. I mean, there's several such episodes like this,
mm.
but it was fun. It was fun. I mean, sort of bringing out the story, at least, to reach out to a bigger audience. So that was clearly interesting.
It
Yeah. I mean,
It
I'm sure you can look back and laugh now. Yes, Supriya, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something, Shivani. Is while Murali was recounting and talking about his sort of experiences, another one of the challenges and something we found really interesting while doing our research and talking to people was we tried to lay out the inner workings of a bookie and how
Hmm.
a punter lays a bet. What sort of things a punter would bet on? Because it was so widespread. We've heard about these bookie dens. You hear about cops catching these guys with briefcases and a lot of mobile phones. Of course, now we believe it's all very sophisticated and it happens in different ways. Everything, there's technology for everything. But back then, there were these phone lines. And so to kind of, just get the inside workings of that, that in itself was sort of an eye opener for us. And we've tried to demonstrate that through the interview that we have. Of course, bookmakers were not willing to come and be interviewed for obvious reasons. So, there's no face to that. But you hear from a bookie how these things were done. You also hear why the captain is the priced catch. And when you get to the top, why you have to be even more careful than otherwise. So, all in all, there's learnings in it for anyone in sports today or anything that you're doing, that if you get to the top and there's malpractice, it's going to at
Hmm.
some point get pulled up. So, for all of these finer nuances, you've got to watch the film to see how it's shown differently and tells you what happened at that point.
All right. On that note, many congratulations for this documentary, Supriya and Murli, and to the entire cast that has appeared and relived their memories and told their story. We leave it for the viewers to now catch, caught out. Certainly an intriguing story of investigations of crime and of our favorite passion, which is cricket in India, and how all of them got entwined into this sordid saga. Murli and Supriya, thanks a lot for speaking to us.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
Shivani.